I wanted to sit down and make this video today, and it's going to be called Saying Goodbye to My Dad, because that's what it's about. On July 31st, 2024, we had to go to the hospital to say goodbye to my dad, and it was a really hard time. It marked the end of his fight with what is called idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. I've never looked into exactly what that means, but seeing it act in real time was more than enough. My dad called me up out of the blue one day about 3 years ago and asked if he could come over for a beer. Of course, I was glad to have him over. It was a little out of the norm, but he came over for a beer. When he got here, he looked worried and stressed out, of course, and the reason was he was coming over to tell me that he was very sick. He didn't tell me what it was called or anything. He just said it was basically lung cancer, was the way he worded it, and the doctors had given him 6 months to a year to live. He fought for 3 years, instead of that 6 months to a year, and I was thankful to have that time with him, but it was really hard to watch that disease beat him up the way it did. Definitely within the first year was when he was on oxygen, and things progressively declined in a bad way. The way Dad was is he didn't want us to worry or to feel or see his pain, so he was always putting on a smile and hiding how much it was hurting him. But when it's something that serious, you can't hide it. It took away his mobility and his ability to enjoy most things. A week before he passed away, he was hospitalized at the Peter Lougheed. It was a Tuesday. I was at work and I got a call from my sister. And I think after dreading the day for 3 years, when I saw the call, I knew it was going to be something bad. My sister had called to tell me that Dad was rushed to the emergency room. So I packed up my stuff as quick as I could, and I ran to the hospital to make sure that I at least got to talk to him. And that was scary. There was about 5 or 6 people working on him and poking him with needles and stuff like that, and kept telling us we could go in and talk to him, but you couldn't get close to him really, and he was just very disoriented and pale, and it was scary. The week that my dad was in the hospital, I think has been one of the most difficult and trying times in my life so far. Coming home from work, trying to play guitar, anything like that, felt absurd to sit there and watch TV or anything, knowing he was there and scared and in pain and struggling. And I was going to see him every day after work, as much as I could. The hospital was all up and down. One minute he'd seem a little bit better, and the next far worse. Some hospital employees would tell us he might be able to go home. Some would tell us there was no way. The uncertainty was very, very difficult. I think it was really hard on the whole family, especially Dad. So After about a week of all that, it was too much. Dad had realized it was too much pain and it was too much struggle, and he was just tired. And it was time in his mind. So I got another call while I was at work. 1 week and 1 day after he was hospitalized. He was hospitalized on a Tuesday. It was the following Wednesday that I was called back to the hospital to say goodbye. When you're in that moment, it's very difficult to decide what you want or need to say. Your mind flies all over the place. And all I could think to say to him was to apologize for being such a difficult kid to raise, or causing him so much grief growing up. Calls from the teachers from the school. Just the rough end of the teenager stuff, fights and stuff like that. And his response in the moment was just that he didn't want me to worry about that or think about that ever again. And I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life, because it was really nice to know that in his mind and heart, he had forgiven me for putting him through some shit. But it was also heartbreaking. And all he asked of me there and then was to take care of my family, me and my mom and my sister. Watching that disease with him was so hard, because you would see him not able to catch his breath, and all you want to do is help them, you know? Is there an inhaler or something you can get them? But there's nothing you can do. So in that moment, the last few, all I could do was sit there with him and hold his hand until I didn't think he would know if I was there anymore or not. He would have done the same for any of us. And it was all I could do. The day after my dad passed away, I went down to my parents' house and I borrowed a couple of old photo books, quite a few actually. And for some reason I thought I was going to be able to get through finding some photos that I liked or I thought would have given a good picture of his life, which I think I found. But thinking I could get through that exercise without having a couple of breakdowns was not gonna happen, and it didn't. But I'm glad I did it, as it did give me a pretty broad picture of his life, and maybe helped me realize a few things about him and my family. My dad was very career-oriented from any time that I could remember. And he climbed his way to one of the top seats at the electrical firm that I now still work for and am a supervisor at. Another way he helped me set my life up for good and got me started on a good career. But he climbed the ladder there, and he was there for a very long time, over 30 years. My dad was a guy that was always looking out for everybody around him, more so than himself. That was with family and friends, and people at work too. People at the company that we both work for spoke very highly of him, to me anyways, and I think in a general sense. If he saw people that needed help, he would help them. He had a very good heart. I've always had a very silly and over-the-top sense of humor, and when my dad was in the thick of his job there, I don't think he thought I was very funny, as much as I may have thought I was. I could see that my nonsense would piss him off a little bit back in those days, probably because he was hoping I was gonna get my crap together sooner or later. But when my dad retired, I saw a lot of stress melt away and him open up to some of that silliness and even be a lot sillier himself. And I think we got a lot closer at that point. When I had started taking on music as a hobby, I remember my dad telling me that music wasn't important at all, and we got in a few arguments about it. Not that it's ever been a huge career move to try to get there, and maybe that's what he thought I was gonna try to do. But I think in the same vein as the stupid humor and stuff like that, I think he saw the value to my personal gratification that was doing for me, and he seemed pretty proud of what I was able to do for myself with those efforts by the time he left us, which was important to me. And it felt good that we had come to understand each other better over that time as well. One of the things I realized when I was going through those photos was that my dad was very happy with simple things in life. When my sister and I were young, there were a lot of pictures of him with us on the floor, playing around, big smile. Same with the wedding day with my mom and stuff. He looked extremely happy. And I think that's where he got most of his happiness and pride from. It was important for him to provide for my mother, my sister, and I to the best he could, and we all felt that he couldn't have done a better job as a father or a husband. He was very good to us, even at his own expense a lot of the time. So I think because my dad was the leader, the head of the family, and he'd kind of gotten to that point at the company that we worked for as well, that he liked to be consulted on lots of different things. So when my wife and I got our first dog, Lacey, and we didn't really ask him anything about it, he seemed a little bit pissed off that I hadn't talked to him about it, which I found ridiculous at the time. I think he thought we were going to bring problems into our life that we didn't need, and just thought, yeah, we were going to cause ourselves some grief. And maybe he was right, because that dog put us through the ringer. But anyways, Dad had come over for a visit after we'd gotten Lacey. Maybe to have a drink or something. I'm not sure exactly what the visit was for. But he was standing near the front door about to leave, and Lacey was sitting at his feet with big doe eyes, trying to get pets from him, and he was ignoring her. And I got mad at him. And I told him, she wants some pets, man. Pet the dog. Don't be a dick. And he seemingly, kind of begrudgingly, reached down and pet her. And that was about it for that visit. I think Lacey made it her mission at that point to make my dad fall in love with her, which she did. So, when my wife and I go on vacation, one of the stresses that we have is being able to get our dogs in time when we get home from vacation. And he knew that. When we had come home from one of our vacations, we were trying to rush to the boarding place to pick our dog up. And he knew that's what we were trying to do. So when he pulled up to the airport that day to pick us up, he had already been there to pick Lacey up and bring her with him to surprise us. So we were very happy to see her in the front seat of his truck when he came to grab us. So the funny part was that while he was driving us home, he said to us, "It's funny that she does that thing with her paw when you're driving." What are you talking about? I don't know what she does. Well, yeah, she does that thing where she makes you hold her paw. No, she's never done that. She usually just sits in the back of the truck quietly when we're driving. Lacey had sat up front with him, which she never did before, and she would not allow him to not hold her paw while he was driving. I think she was paying him back for that first visit where he wouldn't pet her, and she made him hold her paw all the way from Deerfoot South to Deerfoot North, all the way across town. And from that moment on, he was a sucker for her. My dad also loved golf and hockey and fishing with his buddies, as well as watching those things on TV. He had a couple of friends that, from the time he was very young to the day that he passed, he was very close friends with still, which probably is fairly uncommon these days. He had annual fishing trips until he couldn't. That was the highlight of his year, was going out with his buddies. And one of the few things that he actually did for himself. So, I got some photos that I'm gonna run through here. My dad never really specified his favorite song, but there's only one that he mentioned numerous times to me, or I just kind of saw him getting into every time he heard it. So that's what we'll roll while we're going through these pictures. And just like I told him on July 31st, I'll see you on the other side.
gets me high.